I don't like it. I don't like it at all. It's that time again. Allan and I are going to drive this crusty pile hundreds of miles to bring back another treasure. Yes. The faithful Cummins. No grid heaters required. Nothing to see here. Why is the ice inside the truck? How do you like our armrest? Dude, it is frosty out here. That might be the most annoying noise I've ever heard in my life. Woo! Swept-line power wagon. Nice.
Destination is on the left.
Oh, stop. I think we're in the right place. We're definitely in the right place.
I don't think he could be happier.
Nothing to see here, folks. Cat included free of charge. Hi, I'm Jamie. This is Dead Dodge Garage, and this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. If you don't like it from this angle, well, you'll definitely like it from this angle. Ooh, nicely framed. Allan's fixing the windshield so I can actually see. Nothing to see here, just some routine brake maintenance. Yeah, I'm excited. Look at those mountains. Yay! What do you think of our new pride and joy?
I love it. Can we put it together today?
Not right here.
Sold up on title and title insurance.
Mountain. Whoa. Yeah, buddy. Yay, we did it. Oh, that hurts. Where'd you get that?
This is that one I got for Christmas. I
There.
expected this all to be rusted through.
I know. It's not that bad, actually. We'll look at this again in the daylight in like 2 days or something, but for now, the engine's wearing a hat. At least a few viewers have noticed that, strangely, it's not raining here. The sky is clear. It does seem very wrong for this area in this time of year. It is cold, which I don't really like. Science. Anyway, it's been 2 days now since I traded some desirable speed parts and some hard-earned YouTube dollars for this 1967 Dodge A100 flat-nose cab-over pickup. I said cab over, but these can also be described as cab forward or forward control, or a flat-nose van truck thing. And Dodge was far from the only company to produce such a thing. You could find these over at Ford with their Econoline pickup. You could get them from Volkswagen. Those things are really neat. Chevrolet made a pickup version of their Corvair van, also flat-nose, forward control, and with the engine somewhere around here, because Corvair. I've long had an interest in these goofy things. I did used to own a 1966? I don't actually remember. A108 van. It was also yellow, incidentally. It was called the Banana Van, and I did a couple videos on that pretty early on in the channel's history. While they were popular in the 60s, the flat-nose van and van-based pickups kind of disappeared in the 1970s, and it's pretty rare to see any of these on the road today. Any A100 pickup is cool and desirable, but this one is even cooler and even more desirable, at least to me, and I'll tell you why. If you're a Mopar enthusiast or a drag race enthusiast, then you've likely heard of the Little Red Wagon. This was originally intended to be a drag truck. The only problem was it had a propensity to pull the front wheels off the ground and handled absolutely terribly. As mentioned, I've done some miles driving an A108 van, and that thing handled like a wet noodle. I can only imagine that if you shove 500 or 600 horsepower worth of 426 Hemi right here in the middle, things don't necessarily get better. Again, there's a lot to be learned about the Little Red Wagon, and I can't cover all of it here, but the broad strokes are 426 Hemi, super short torque flight, 8 3/4, no drive shaft in the middle. And all of that is mounted to a subframe in roughly the middle of an A100 pickup. Although he didn't originally build the truck, Bill Maverick Golden certainly made the Little Red Wagon famous. running it on 2 wheels all the way down quarter-mile drag strips across America in the 60s and 70s, and even on into like the 2000s in a replica truck, and becoming widely known as the original wheelstander. Given the ridiculous and unique spectacle that the Little Red Wagon provided, it stands to reason that at least a few enthusiasts over the years might like to build their own. And essentially, that's what we're looking at here. Kind of. Now, this is far from a perfect Little Red Wagon tribute or replica, clone, anything like that. But essentially, it's built the same way. It's on the same 90-inch wheelbase. It's got the same 8 3/4 axle. It's got the same stubby 727 transmission in the middle. There is a small difference in the engine area, but we'll get to that in a minute. As you might imagine, I've been excitedly researching the Little Red Wagon recently. I've looked at countless period photos. Some versions of that truck have no windows at all. Some have black, I assume Lexan. This one still has all of its factory glass. The front bumper has been deleted because race car. Like the Little Red Wagon, it has no heater or wipers, but it actually does still have its factory lights, which is interesting. This thing could, in theory, be street legal. Well, one might take a look at this thing and immediately think, aha, wheelie truck. There are actually a lot of details on it that say this thing might have been a serious drag racer. Obviously, it isn't red, and judging by the different layers of paint that are peeling off, it was never red. It was blue, or blue and white, and then yellow and black. There's some lettering here that says the lettering was by Wild's Signs. Unfortunately, the lettering has been painted over. There's a spot on the other side where someone has tried sanding down to read it. I don't know if we're going to be able to do that or not. Suffice to say, I don't know who built this truck. I don't know who ran this truck. I don't know what it was called. I have no operational history on it at all, which is a little unfortunate. But there are more details in here that say actual drag truck to me. For one thing, it's got real racing buckets, 2 of them. They have a bit of padding. This one was slightly wet. I've already soaked my butt multiple times on that. Race panel with actual gauges and switches, a real deal Autometer Sport Comp tachometer with a shift light, and obviously wheelie bars. If you just wanted to do big ridiculous wheelies, you aren't going to have wheelie bars. You're going to have like spark pads or something. It's got a Promatic shifter. It's got a fire extinguisher. It's got other custom touches like a boot that covers the shifter and the door panels. In fact, this one over here even has a little cubby, you know, for registration or racetrack paperwork or a pen or whatever. And all of that custom made stuff is yellow and black, matching the motif of the truck. There are some leaves. Look at all this extra room in the cab for activities. Also, the custom ducting that replaced the factory doghouse. That leads to the radiator, which is several feet farther back than it would have been originally. This plate here covers where the original battery box would have sat. You can see the master cylinder through the hole where the cap in the floor should have been. I am pleased that it is shiny and new, and it actually works. Because this is a forward control van, the steering column goes through the floor at an angle like that. It has old school floor pedals, like were last seen on normal cars in the early 50s-ish. Or the 60s if you're Studebaker. You are the crumple zone in this thing. It does still have the factory cowl ventilation box, and I noticed the vent doors are gone. That means this thing's a little breezy for a winter daily driver. Notice this thing does have a bunch of switches on the panel. The only one that's wired at all right now is the fan switch. I do like the aluminum glove box door delete. That's pretty slick. All A100s and A108s seem to gather rust in these lower body panels. Obviously, this truck is no exception. There's a good bit of Bondo in it in a good few places, but in general, it's not too bad. Unlike a D-Series truck, these things are unibody. That means the frame rails are integrated with the floor. There's no separate frame to bolt things onto, and that makes the mid-engine conversion, let's say, interesting. Here's a good view of the big block planted right in the middle of the thing. We'll talk about that in a minute. Notice it does have a custom-built crossmember at the front that runs in front of the oil pan. It's mounted on solid ears right there. There's a second tubular crossmember back here underneath the transmission. Those mounts are tied into the original unibody frame rails, which again, interesting. As you can see here, there's actually a rectangular bit of tubing tied into the frame and running rearward toward the axle. Incidentally, it's welded straight to it. As mentioned, there were multiple iterations of the Little Red Wagon. My understanding was always that the rear end was mounted solidly to a subframe, much like this, but apparently that subframe pivoted, so it still had small leaf springs and shock absorbers in place. This one has none of that. It's just solid. You can see the stands coming down from the frame there, and then of course, those members that run forward. Because race car. The original fuel tank would have been found under the rear floor here. This one obviously has this big can. Looks like, I don't know, 10, 12 gallons. It's pretty good sized. I believe the original truck had one like 2-gallon size mounted up there. I was informed by the previous owners that it was set up for dual batteries. One was here and one was here. Presumably that was for ballast. I've alluded to the existence of a big block engine up here, and I suppose now it's time to pop the hood and see what that's about. Might need more hands though. This is not a Hemi. It's a 440, and not even really a good one. I don't know if you'll be able to read this at all, but right here it says 6T440. And what that means is this is a 1966 truck or RV engine. If you know your big block history, then you know that means this is a cast crank low compression engine. Essentially the worst 440 that was ever made. Now of course the reason they were not great is the factory configuration. The low compression pistons way down in the hole. I don't know if this still has those or not, so we're going to find out today. I can tell you that the factory crankshaft is still in place. And I know that because it still has the cast crank specific external balance weight on the front and on the rear. On an SFI flex plate, thankfully. Now it might look to you like this engine's not really together. And that is, of course, because it isn't. The previous owners, who I would like to thank very much for selling me this thing and holding on to it for like a week for me, fantastic dudes. One of them, the son, built a Gasser D100 truck. It originally had aluminum heads, and one of them kind of got destroyed. He needed some cylinder heads for his truck. And the dad said, well, you can grab those brand new closed chamber 915s off the Wheelie van if you want. So we did. What we've got here are a set of reconditioned 452s with decent valve springs. And that's fine by me. Except, of course, if this thing still has low compression pistons, this thing's going to be a dog. Also, they're just thrown on here. We need new head gaskets. We need valve cover gaskets. We need valve covers that are actually cool, like the MTs that came off of this thing. And kind of no headers. There is, in fact, a B-body header hanging here on the passenger side, but I just threw that on there yesterday to see if it works. It doesn't hit anything up here, but the ground clearance leaves a little to be desired. Don't know how I'm going to solve that yet. I know how I'd like to solve it. One of two ways, actually. Either we dress this thing up like a jet boat engine, or we build some zoomies. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I've got all kinds of small block headers if we need to hack things up and build a set. Somewhere in the world, I've got a set of crazy dragster big block headers. It might look to you like this thing's been out in the elements. And that is, of course, because it has. Notice the valley pan is disgusting. It's full of mud and rusty hardware. I think those are carb nuts, and I think they're probably not worth using anymore. So I'm sure you can imagine my level of excitement when I pulled the dipstick and found that. This thing's full of rainwater. Now I know they had this engine covered, kind of, but doesn't seem to have worked. I have been assured that the crankshaft turns and that there was, at least last time they checked, no water in the cylinders themselves. Because the heads have to come off anyway, we're going to verify that. If things look okay in the bottom of this engine and we can get all the water drained out, we'll proceed and put this thing back together. I haven't seen videos of this thing doing wheelies, but I have seen videos of it running and idling down a gravel road, and it sounded incredible. Never did pull the transmission dipstick. Okay, it's clean. Massively over full though. Maybe just the torque converter drained back. Or the cooler, which is actually mounted there underneath the floor, like straight against the floor with no fan. Not sure if that can actually cool anything. Anyway, the transmission pan, which is quite deep, could also be full of water. Thankfully, it's got a drain plug on it. Don't think I've pointed out the custom wheel tubs yet. They're gigantic, possibly made out of a 55-gallon drum. They could house a much larger tire than this thing currently has. I think it's only like a 9-inch wide slick. They're also really terrible. Oh, and someone added screws to them because race car. Also notice the big long wheel studs. That's like race legal stuff too. Not sure what's going on here. Normal open lug nuts would have solved everything wrong with this, so add that to the list. I did notice it has nice, relatively recent KYB gas adjust shocks, because if you're going to do wheelies, you might as well soften the landing as much as you can. This passenger door isn't the greatest. The hinges are super gummy, and it takes a couple tries to get that one to latch. Ah! I do notice all the window mechanisms are still here and functional. You may have noticed a distinct lack of a roll bar or harnesses in here. I noticed too. Oh, it came with some extra parts. Headlight surrounds, the pie tin things, some spare door panels, although I'll be keeping the custom upholstered ones, some header flanges if I do want to build some zoomies, which I do. Also some spare doors. Ah, and a big yellow coil, and an Excel Super Stock. I like both of those things. I'm sure that won't get annoying at all. There you go. Now, I've already told you that the original Little Red Wagon had a 426 Hemi right here, and that this thing currently has a 440 that may or may not be any good. So I know what you're thinking, and I sure like the way you think. But I'll tell you right now, if that happens, it's not going to happen immediately. If the 440 in the van turns out to be no good, this will be our plan B, at least for now. This is a race-built 440, which I acquired a year or maybe a little more ago, with plans of building a ridiculous race car. I'm not there yet, so this thing is available. It was in a Challenger drag car back in the 80s and has very little runtime on it. It looks almost brand new everywhere. The bearings are perfect, the crankshaft is magnificent, the Mopar Performance Purple Shaft solid lifter cam that was in it looks like it's never been run, so we like that quite a bit. This would do cool stuff in the van. Notice I can't make up my mind whether I call this thing a truck or a van. Maybe I just call it a thing. Or the banana. You may well have noticed this. The passenger side bedside here had a bit of an unfortunate meeting with part of a tree. We're gonna see if we can fix that at some point. Might need some touch-up. Oh, I will have you know I sent a couple pictures of this thing to Uncle Tony, and he responded, "Dude, you have to put a blower on that." Yeah. Not today, but someday soon. You may be wondering at this point why I made the poor financial decision to buy this thing. Don't I have enough projects? Don't I have enough drag cars? You're right. All I've ever wanted out of my drag racing and horsepower endeavors is to do wheelies. And what better to do wheelies in than this? Well, I don't know about you, but although it's cold, my fingies aren't happy about that. The suspense is killing me. I gotta know what the inside of this engine looks like. I have seen under the covers, and I know for a fact there are push rods in there, but they're just kind of like sitting. Pulled a few bolts that are loosely holding stuff together. Do some exploratory surgery. Why? Oil line, copper. These covers are nice and clean underneath. They won't be going back on. I'll tell you that right now. I don't know if I like working on this like this or not. It's better than some things. Leaning over the fenders of a pickup truck, for example. Nice. Some tree parts from the ride, that's to be expected. As mentioned, these are 452 heads. 452 heads are the standard big block heads used pretty much throughout the 70s till the end. There may have been another number or two there, I can't remember. 452s are not all that unlike the 906s. These rocker arms look very nice. As I understand, these heads and all of the hardware were freshly cleaned and restored. Now hold on a second. That's not a 452, that's a 346. 346. 0432, 1972. So they told me they were 452 heads, but they're 346 heads. And that again, I imagine, is another typical big block head casting number from the 70s. Again, they're going to be open chamber, nothing super special. I am glad to see all the hardware here. I probably have it somewhere in a box. Now, I did mention all this stuff is attached to the factory unibody rails, but there is extra plating and reinforcement in key places. They open this up a good ways to ease service. I like that. Okay, these are typical 5/16 push rods, 48821 part number. They look nice aside from the bits of surface rust in places. On this side, there's one mismatched rocker arm, and I bet that's because somebody punched a push rod through it. You'll have that sometimes. These heads look really nice on the inside, aside from the rust. These are really nice Taylors, I think. Yep, Taylor cable, spark plug wires. We'll be retaining those. This is actually a new, well, remanufactured points distributor, single points. We probably won't stick with single points, but at least to get it running, that'd be cool. I'm just gonna pull this off, I think. Make more room for things. It's nice having a place to pile parts. This is just a core. I think it's a 750 double pumper.
God, that thing's heavy.
Like the shiny new thermostat housing, it is not one of those cheap chrome stupid things. This does have a shiny new 440 source aluminum water pump housing and pump, and front drive pulleys and brackets and hardware. I'm glad to have this Torker 2 manifold. I actually have another one in the shop. There are cobwebs in this intake. 9/16 hex bolts for the intake, of course. Whoop! Oh, come on. There we go. I hope all you commenters that keep saying you want to see me work are enjoying this. Ouch. That's cool. There's rust staining up into a couple of these ports. Like most of these ports. And that means there was standing water in here. That's bad. I'm running out of good spots. Nice. Well, okay. Honestly, for a minute there, I thought that was going to be worse. These poor heads. I mean, there's like flaking in here. And these sat with water for a while. That's pool water. Well, pool of ice, actually. That's water. That is okay. I don't think we'll be using these heads. Which one do you like better? The intake port full of standing water or the one full of ice? I kind of like both. Doesn't look like these heads have ever been ported. The ports are actually kind of a weird shape and notably smaller than the holes in the tray. They do have nice new looking springs with dampers inside, but it doesn't do much for us right now, does it? I want to point this out. I've gotten a few comments about this on my 440 cam failure video. Several people noticed that the retainers are smaller than the springs. That's something I've seen many, many times. Yeah, there's a bit of a mismatch there. It's not ideal, obviously. There are a lot of heads out there running like this with no problem. Just saying. Oh, neat. An improperly installed Healy coil. Pretty much the least of my worries right at the moment. Big block head bolts are 11/16 hex. I was told these were just kind of like snug down, but apparently at least a few are tight. Removing the extension should solve the problem. Oh yeah, it's amazing how much torque those things eat. Time to find out what kind of day we're gonna have. Oh God. Still heavy. Well, that's bad. Especially when I was told specifically there was no water or rust in the cylinders. Number 7 survived. What does that say? It's part number there. Obviously this is a flat top. This is not the factory dished piston. So that's good news. This is not good news. I've seen worse. We can hone that. Here's a look at the underside of the 346 cylinder head. Good bit of rust here. Nothing like in the ports, so that's good news. Parts avalanche. All right, in addition to the aftermarket flat top pistons, I'm looking through the cam tunnel here, and I can just see the side of a nicely ground and polished connecting rod. There's more good news. That is an L2266 forged TRW piston, and this thing is standard bore. That would be why we're still seeing a shadow up there at the top. Someone honed this thing, but didn't actually bore it when they built it. The cam looks okay. I don't see any wiped lobes or anything yet. There are a couple rust spots, with that being the biggest one. I could clean that really easily if it wasn't in an engine, but it kind of is. Also, I don't see any paint marks, so this doesn't seem to be a purple shaft. All of the lifters pass a drop test, even the slightly yucky looking ones here. I think maybe I can lightly hone this one cylinder and do my best to limit the debris that gets down there and packed on the rings. Vacuum all this out, spray things off a little bit, get these lifters cleaned up, swap to a different set of heads, and put this thing back together. We might just be okay. Who's ready for more disappointment? Me! Oh. Oh, crap. I'm going to pull the alternator through bolt there. Because, of course, it goes to the end of the head. I can't remove it. Someone put a radiator in the way. Oh, wait. Go through the hole. Don't lose those. Those are actually the right spacers. Oh, God. Okay. Yeah, pretty much same exact thing on number 6. But it's worse because that piston's down. You can see where it was sitting before. And there's a rust stain. It's not majorly pitted, but it is pitted. This thing really hasn't run much since it was put together. You can tell by how fresh everything looks. Oh, I'm really not excited about this. But I'm hopeful we can clean it up. And I poured the port soup all over myself. If someone was real desperate, these could have been reused. A little bit of the magic copper coat and slap them back in there. But I'm not going to do that. I've got new ones coming today, as well as a new valley pan. Man, this is tasty. Almost as tasty as that. Yeah, you know, I was contractually obligated to drag those down and throw them on the block for fun. Not today, but someday, maybe, I hope. Standing around and staring at these 426 Hemi heads sitting on the 440 is very fun. But it's not productive, so I guess I'll put them back on the shelf. You know, there aren't actually any holes rusted in this thing yet. I could clean it up and reuse it. I just don't want to. Now these heads certainly aren't going in the scrap bin. Given enough time, I'll break these down, knock all the rust out of there, refinish the valve seats, clean up the valves, replace them if necessary, and throw them back together for future batches. For now though, here's what I'm thinking. These are some 452 heads, which were rebuilt in like 1980 or something. They've got fancy springs and dampers as well, with very, very low miles. Fancy retainers. They are set up for lash caps, which I don't think I need really. And these, unlike the other heads, have been lightly ported. These heads need a bit of a cleanup. I need to knock this silicone off, and I suppose I'm gonna have to go ahead and paint them orange so they look right on that engine. Oh, I do have the tray off that engine. It's got gaskets inside and out, which is really silly. I don't use those at all. I use silicone, generally speaking. The new one's already at the parts store. Oh, I do have another torque or two for this engine, and I've got a double pumper that might actually work already. We'll have to keep that in mind. Here's the underside of one of those 452 heads. Note the open chamber and a bit of sootiness. Notice these things have been decked a good bit. Choose not to worry about that. These are just getting the absolute quickest of cleanups. I'll spray them down, spritz them with some orange paint, and on they go. At least once I'm satisfied the bores are worth using. One head's orange. No, you can't see it any closer. It's cold today. Yes, I did warm up the paint can slightly. I don't want to talk about it. It's fine, but it's not my finest work. While the paint was drying and my phone was charging, I was working on the engine here. I've got it mostly cleaned up to my satisfaction, although I do still need to run an air nozzle down in these bores and get that crap off the top of the rings. As you can see, I scraped the deck surfaces and I ran a dingle ball hone down the number 5 cylinder there. What you see now is just a stain. That's nicely cleaned up. I did the same thing over here with number 6. Now our biggest issue was this line coming down from the top and then the small amount on top of the piston there, which I really can't touch. It doesn't feel like much. I've cleaned it up as best I can like this, and my next move is to rotate the crank, scrape it with the ring a little bit and see what it looks like. Hopefully it comes good and we'll be fine. What I'm more worried about is that old shadow in there. The more I looked at this, I realized that is a very old issue. I pointed out that these are standard size bores and they still have a shadow up at the top. Notice that one doesn't. That's because someone honed the crap out of that one after it filled up with water years ago. In spite of all that, this is still a measurable divot. I can feel that with the finger pretty easily, and I'm not excited about it. But we're gonna run it. If this thing's a bit of a smoker, that's why. I did start cleaning up the outside of the engine as well. I want all of this orange to be as orange as it can be. There's still some stains here from that water that was running out of the valley pan, but overall it's looking pretty good. I have half a mind to like polish this transmission case and maybe wax it or something so it stays that way. I mean, if it's going to be visible, it should at least look decent. Just about have the second head ready for paint now. A little more scrubbing and scraping and we'll be good to go. But I noticed something on this 452 head I wanted to point out to you. Direct your attention toward the spark plug holes on this head. Notice there's a little cast-in lump right here. If you try to screw in an earlier style spark plug that has a washer attached to it, it's gonna hit that lump and it won't bottom all the way out. That's because these heads are designed for the peanut plug, the washerless style spark plug used on Chevy heads and other things. I just want to take a second and make sure everybody knows I am somewhat capable of painting things nicely. It just doesn't matter in this case, because it's mine and because race car. Also, I'd really like to have this thing running in like a couple days, and that means just get it done. That's kind of gross. Ugh. Before I run to the parts store, I decided I should get that nasty water-filled oil draining. Let that just dribble for a while. Then I realized, this is all kind of a moot point if the crank doesn't turn. I was told that it does, but I decided I should probably verify that for myself. So I blew all the crap out of the cylinders, a bunch more stuff out of the valley, and some out of the nasty coolant passages. You may have noticed that everything in there looks terrible. That would be because race car. You can't really run coolant on a racetrack, so you run water. I am thankful that most of it has been drained out because it's been freezing lately. And cracking this block would be unfortunate. How much of that stuff was supposed to go in my mouth? Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and add some magic lubrication in here, just as a precaution. Zero problem at all, turned immediately. Dropped my ratchet, so I can't show you that. Turning the engine revealed some light rust in a third cylinder, number 4. It's not too bad, and I choose not to worry about it. Remember those forged flat-top TRW pistons? Yeah, they're not zero decked. They're still down in the hole a good ways. What's that, like 30 thou? I don't know. A bit. So yeah, not a high compression unit still. I know there's a bunch of water in this oil, so I don't think this is going to be pretty. Oh, there it is. I don't want that in my oil drain. It's a dangerous game. It's called Watch for Oil. Might take a bit, though. This is far from the first time I've seen this. The first time was in my friend Connor's 400 big block out of his step-side truck, like 11 or 12 years ago. Okay. We're getting there. Still water, though. Oop. Okay. No. There's still some water in there, but now it's largely oil, let's say. Okay. I'm going to let this pee for a while and head to the parts store. Headed to get wheelie van parts in the 81, and I set off my first car alarm, even with the new and improved exhaust. There's another $150 I'll never see again. Oh, it's just way too cold to be painting anything. Anyway, the new valley pan's orange, that's the good news. Quickly running out of daylight here. Gotta get these heads on, so I'm giving the decks one more pass with some brake clean and a blue towel. Then I'll drop the new Felpro gaskets on. How thick are these Felpro blue stripe rebuilder head gaskets when compressed? What's the resulting compression ratio? No idea. They're head gaskets. They're gonna work fine. Make sure your gaskets are clean too. This one's clean, but it doesn't seem excited about it. Well, it's a while later, and it's dark, and the temperature's dropping again. The good news is, we've got cylinder heads. They're installed, and they're even torqued properly. I've had this thing dribbling nasty goo for quite a while now. I've fished around in there with a screwdriver. I've also dumped about a quart of clean oil down it, which is why the color is different in the middle there. I'm trying to get the most horrible crap out of here that I can. At a certain point, I'm just gonna have to call it, fill this thing with new oil, run it, and then we'll change the oil again later to get the residual bits of moisture and gunk out. I should pull the pan, but I don't wanna do that right now. At least not until we have a better idea of what this engine is like. I'll tell you right now, if this thing was an actual wheel stander, like it spent all of its time in the air on 2 wheels, this mid-forwardish sump pan is not gonna cut it. We would either put a rear sump truck pan in here, or something else ridiculous and custom. Or the big giant boat pan I've got with baffles in it and stuff. Anyway, that's all a future Jamie problem. I might just let this dribble overnight. I've always used a length of like mechanics wire or a coat hanger to hold the push rods in place for easy installation of the rocker arms. The last time I showed that on video, multiple commenters said, dude, why don't you just use the dipstick? Well, I don't know, because I hadn't thought of it. It's brilliant. Driver's side rockers cleaned, installed, torqued, pre-lubricated, and I certainly didn't overfill several rockers and get oil on the ground. I would never do that. It's cold outside, so I decided to come hide in here and work on something else. That something else was digging around in my stash of valve covers, looking for something cool enough to put on this rig. Up until just a couple days ago, I had a polished set of Mopar Performance big block covers right here. But you'll notice they're gone. They're gone because I took them with me, and when I made the deal for this wheelie van truck thing, I included them to get some extra bucks off the price. Why did I do that? They would have been perfect. So I think I've settled on these slightly ratty direct connection chrome covers. Pretty sure I had these on my Charger like 10 years ago or something. They've been in my stash for a long, long time. I gave them a bit of a polish, which they needed desperately. I guess I should do the valve gear on the other side before I totally give up for the night. Just like in my 318 poly build, one of these push rods has some particularly gnarly rust. Because this is actually like a high revving, high power application, I'm a little bit worried about that. I'm gonna run it anyway, but I am a little worried about it. And with that, it's pretty much ready for an intake manifold. And a valley pan, obviously, and valve cover gaskets and plugs and wires and some other little things. Now, I know I mentioned that we've got this Torker 2 440 ready to pop back on there after the cobwebs are blown out of it, but I think I have something else in mind. So I threw a blankie on its head for the night. We'll see about intake option number 2 tomorrow. We're going on a trip in our favorite reliable daily driver, Mountain. Neat. But wait, it's getting better. Yep, it's a trunk full of race car parts. Bye-bye now. Hey, that was Ryan with McLovin Garage. He drove 3 hours round trip to meet me with that tunnel ram he was selling for his neighbor. Everyone say thank you to Ryan and go check out his channel. How you doing, buddy? I'm gonna stay over here. And it's dark, of course. But hopefully, you can see this, because I can. And it's the greatest thing ever. Probably fine. Maybe I flipped the scoop backwards, I don't know. Look at it. Okay, I hope you're sitting down, because I'm gonna give you a little taste from the best angle. You ready? Look at that. Oh, it's amazing. Now these are B-body headers. They actually are polished, or were. That one's still kind of shiny. This one's been painted because it was somewhat modified. That's fine. I'm gonna have to modify it more because it's kind of on the valve cover right here. That's a problem I can solve with a hammer. At worst, a cutting implement and a torch, I suppose. I cannot tell you how disappointed I am in myself for no longer owning polished, finned Mopar Performance valve covers, because they would have matched perfectly with that. I might have to drive to an hour north of Seattle and get those back. The carbs are just placeholders. They're cores. I don't even think they're complete carbs, really. There's no valley pan yet. The paint on that froze last night, I think, so I gotta get more Hemi Orange and solve that little issue. We still don't have a starter, oil drain plug, oil, alternator, belt. I'm sure I'm forgetting something else important. Header fasteners and gaskets. But this is without a doubt the greatest thing I've ever seen. And with any luck, I can make it actually work tomorrow. Never you mind the fact that these headers are pretty much pointing straight at the fuel tank right at the moment. We'll deal with that later. I don't know, some kind of like upturned pipe or hater flaps. That'd be good for keeping the water out. I could and would stare at this all night, but well, Chili's calling my name. This pretty much has to run tomorrow because our weeks-long stretch of dry but cold weather is supposed to come to an end. The clouds are gonna roll in, and then it will rain and possibly snow for the rest of forever. So yeah, wheelies or bust. Meow. Why are you looking at me like that? Well, it's the next day, and we're hard at work here. Allan's removing studs from the ruined heads that we need to restore at some later date for, I don't know, a different project. And I'm over here working on the tunnel ram. I've got the scoop and the carburetors off. Those turned out to be factory 340 Carter numbers, so that's kind of cool. I'm not going to be using them for this at this point. I'm going to use those. Those are a pair of 500s that came on my small block Y-end. One cool thing about the Y-end tunnel ram is the carb stud locations allow for either mounting the carburetors front to back or sideways. So you could put big gigantic Hollies on here if you wanted. For now, I'm gonna run the Edelbrocks. Do need to clean years worth of dust, metal shavings, and that sort of thing off of this tunnel ram, so now's the time to do that. Also some cobwebs. I'm pleased to see this thing has the correct screws and all of the gaskets in place. Everything seems to be tight. I don't know if this has ever been run, so now's the time to verify all of that. Ooh, hold your breath. Hey, that's not just good, it's good enough. Here's our donor tunnel ram setup. This is a small block Wyand. I can't remember what I traded for this. Oh, an air gap intake and a good Holly core, I think. Anyway, this is a pair of 500 Edelbrocks. They were running on a 360 as recently as like middle of last year. They're probably good to go. If I was smart, I'd open them and check. I don't know, I'll think about it. Anyway, in the interest of time, I'm gonna reuse this absolutely hideous blue dual feed setup. I can't use this linkage. This linkage is pretty nice, but it is set up to pull that way. And because our engine is behind the cab, our cable needs to pull from the bottom. So I'm gonna save that for this tunnel ram, and instead, let's set up this very fancy Mr. Gasket deal on the bottom of these linkages. All right, fine, I'll look in the carbs. Oh, well, I'm glad I did that. This is really gross. It's to be expected though. Got the front carb opened as well. Yeah, this horrible sandy buildup, very typical to see in these Edelbrocks. I believe it's just down to corrosion and horrors related to modern ethanol gas. If you keep your rigs running with that ethanol fuel, you won't have any problem. It's when they sit that you start to see stuff like this. Anyway, I'm gonna blow these out. I'll pull them off, probably turn them upside down and dump out the big chunks. Clean this up as best I can, blow out all the passages with air, and we'll be good to go. You know, it's kind of heavy. We made an executive decision. Okay, you can help now.
You want help?
Go ahead. Ran over my toes. That's fun. Parking braked. Carburetors are back together. And I get to figure out the whole scoop situation. Meanwhile, Byron's prepping the engine. We've got spark plugs in it now. I think they're even tight. The drain plug is back in it. And now a filter and oil are joining the 440. Allan's fixing the headers. Stop it. Oh, yeah. Easy mode. No, that's a 2050 high zinc race oil. And it's cold. Why didn't I think of that? Oh yeah, the transmission dipstick's in the way. Starter and alternator shopping in the lean-to now, hoping to find something worth using. That doesn't look too bad, but I'm pretty sure that's the one that exploded on the Charger when it was like brand new. Don't know anything about this one, but it sounds, I don't know, it spins. I think it's fine. If not, I have more. Oh, I buried the starters. This one looks pretty nice. Needs hardware though. I would use that mini starter, but they don't fit big blocks the best. You have to take off the terminal extension and then it's just really close to the block and I don't like it. Did you know that that stuff kind of smells? Had just enough orange paint left to fix the tray. At least the parts you see will look nice. You know, I almost didn't test this one because it looks so nice. Glad I did.
Did you hit it with a hammer yet?
Not yet, but give it a minute. Really? Okay, back to the pile. Again! Oh, good. That one's a torchy bastard. All right, we're good. What? The alternator. This is the special bolt for it. And you're gonna notice it's got some spacers. The bracket should go on the front. Bolt goes through. Spacer number 1. Spacer number 2. Bracket goes right there. You got all that?
I got all that.
All right then. Getting ready to set up this Hilborn style intake hat carb thing. I've got all the screws loose. These plates are adjustable to account for different carburetor configurations. I have to loosen the plates, put the plates on, put the air cleaners on, then set the hat on, then put the middle plate up there, and then screw it all down together. For some unknown reason, the hardware is metric too. There you go. Notice, it's installed backwards. We're gonna point the intake rearward into the bed. Seems like the thing to do for science. Okay, I changed my mind though. I'm gonna wait to install the scoop until we've got this thing fired up. We verify there aren't any little fuel volcanoes in these carburetors, and we make sure there are no horrifying backfires that we can't put out. Okay, we've got battery power put to it now with a jump box. Did learn that the cutoff switch is not in use right now. The other cable that came off it is just going to a terminal. I guess that's fine. Eventually we need this for safety and legality. Hopefully we can now crank this engine over and we'll find compression in 8 cylinders. Dude, all the gauges are lit up. Why are all the gauges lit up? I don't know. Oh, that switch turns on a light. That switch turns on a light, but the fans aren't actually working. Okay. Well, nothing works, and all the dash lights are stuck on for some reason. No smoking over there, right?
No smoking, just, you know.
That black wire might be
wires of mystery.
Okay.
Jumping right down to 7 volts.
Well, that could be a problem. Hey, that's better. Okay. No oil pressure on the gauge yet. It is a 1,000,000-mile long line, though. All I really wanted to know is if this thing cranked even and had compression, and it does seem to. Sure would like to see some pressure on this gauge, though. Wow, they do work. Incredible. Oh, wait. Sometimes they work. Yeah, it's pulling off this breaker. And that's the battery feed right there. That should be pulling off the key. That's headlight. In, out, accessory. So yeah, it's unused. Okay, I know what needs to happen, but we should be good. That yellow wire should be the ignition. We've learned why the battery cutoff switch is disconnected. It no worky. No continuity. Wow, that does feel really bad. Okay. All right, my paint's dry, so time for the moment we've all been waiting for. We're gonna get the tunnel ram mounted up on the 440, and then we can install plug wires, headers, fuel line, throttle, hopefully, and whatever else I'm forgetting. I have always used Right Stuff Black. It's fantastic goop. Unfortunately, the big Cheese Whiz cans have always been garbage. They recently redesigned it, and somehow it's maybe worse. It took a lot of work to get silicone to come out of this at all. Anyway, I surround all of these ports with black silicone on the bottom only. I want to seal this to the value of the engine, but I want to be able to pull the intake off in the future and reuse the pan. So I just use a reasonable amount around all of the ports and the ends. Alan.
Yes, sir.
Would you be so kind as to hand me the tunnel ram? Oh, hey, now that you're halfway done with that, these go on those bolts. Under the nuts.
I knew that.
Yeah.
I just put them on there and put another bolt over top.
I'd rather you didn't. Hold that, please. Here we go. Okay, the party can begin. Oh, it's so glorious. It's only gonna get better. Some of these bolts aren't long enough.
Here, while I'm doing those, you should check the snugness on the other side.
I can do that.
Because I left them pretty loose.
Oh no, they're good. Okay, that one's not. Okay, that one's not tight at all.
Oh, what? Okay, I had it tighter than that. Unless I just totally missed it.
I think you did. They do settle, so you always have to go kind of like back and forth, crisscross. You want to touch all of them like 3 times. And let it sit here and then check it again later. Yes. Maybe. I've been asked a good few times over the years, yes, these passages are supposed to be uncovered. Helps to cool the exhaust crossover port.
Trying to solve problems.
Trying so far unsuccessfully, but we'll get it. What are you? What? I don't know what this wire is for either. Parachute? There's a pull cable that goes back there. What does that hook to?
Okay. Oh, it's hooked to absolutely nothing. Do you want to just yank it out?
So that cable came back and there's a little U thing that it ran through to go to, like, I don't know, the center.
Interesting. We're going to attach the fuel line. We'll call that temporary because it's rubber. Can't have rubber to be doing giant wheelies at a drag strip. Also, I'm getting the throttle hooked up over on this side. I bent up the bracket that came with it and mounted it off of one carb stud that I, kind of sort of almost stripped out. we're gonna call that temporary too. All right, tell you what's burn. It's pretty cool. Calculations might have been a little off on that
Should
one.
we also just clearance this?
Yeah, with a hammer. Yeah. I burned my thumb. It hurt. It's not bad. Okay, small issue. The stupid jump over tube is contacting the number 6 plug. So we're gonna have to dent that or try and bend it or something. We do need to be able to put a plug wire on that. I think this is how this is done, but I'm not sure. Okay. Oh yeah, it's way worse. So anyway, I started cutting. Gently sawzall it. It's a wood blade. There you go. Oh, that one's extra. All right.
This is science.
Science. You've heard of science. There you go. There you go. That's a bit of a gap there. No one ever needs to see me well.
I'm sure this isn't bad for cameras, right?
No, I think it's fine. Don't look at those welds. Oh, what an absolute embarrassment. If I had known that like half of today would be spent trying to make this stupid header fit upside down and flip to the wrong side, I probably would have done something else, but we're kind of committed now. I think it's gonna work. We had to move this pipe that way, like 3/4 of an inch, after bashing it with a hammer and bending the flange. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Plug wires. I did most of the welding on this thing with it bolted to one of the spare cylinder heads. It straightened out the flange and it pops right on the studs now. It doesn't hit anything. It clears the plugs and plug wires. What a relief. In case you were wondering, it's a great idea to brutalize your header while it's bolted to a cylinder head. That'll help keep the flange in order. Otherwise, all kinds of horrible stuff can happen, which we've already experienced at least once today. Woo! So apparently this is how you do this. Nice. So the radiator drain was open. It's shut now, but we have another problem over here. No block plug. Currently, that's a rubber vacuum plug shoved in backwards, which surprisingly fits very well. We're digging around for a pipe plug at the moment. All right, so cooling system's full is probably the wrong word. There's 2.5 gallons in there at least, so that's good. Exhaust is hooked up. What do you think of the purple hornies pointing out around the gas can? It'll work for now. Shut-off switch, battery, which is still mostly dead. Ignition's wired. Headers are tight. I don't know. I think we're like ready. I have no idea who sent me this, but thank you. I needed it. No, that's not acetone. Vroom, vroom. Okay, important notes.
I tightened that down on the alternator just so it doesn't rattle loose.
Neat. The timing is wherever it was. Haven't touched it. It ran that way, I think, so hopefully it's close. The firing order should be right. Also, this is a stock distributor and this is a ridiculous cam, so it may not be happy. Also, it's cold. But let's see if it wants to run. Oh yeah, let me know if gas goes shooting everywhere. Safety switch on. Yeah, I don't know if there's actually power, and if there is, there's not enough. Red to coil possibly. Ready?
No.
Anything?
I'm showing 5.9.
5?
5.9.
Oh.
Going through the ballast resistor.
It is going through the resistor.
I want to close my ear for this one.
Oh, it's not that loud yet. Hold it.
On.
Too much time. Did you hear it? Kick back.
Yeah, it stopped for a moment.
Yeah. Again. Why is it crank so bad?
It dropped down to 8.
Really?
Well, cranked it in.
still at 12.1.
That's why it had 2 batteries.
See the plus? Yeah, hold the plus.
Done. You got 11.2.
Okay, let's go.
Jesus Christ. I think I need to leave it on there.
I turned it off too, though.
Oh, okay.
Too much timing. Okay.
Sure sounds like it.
Yeah, for sure.
No oil pressure. None.
Oh, we got smoke.
We got smoke here too.
Got smoke.
Kill it! As long as this is off, you're fine.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Yeah,
Hey, that's
why-
not a good smell.
You can see it down there between the two. Tucked in left-hand side of the housing down there. Yeah, those that you're looking right at that are kind of wrapped up, that's where it looked like the smoke was coming from.
Huh. That's weird.
What's melted? Nothing?
Nothing.
Oh, let's turn the power back on and give it a minute.
Yeah. Well, this thing started running, which is great, and then it started smoking. Turns out it was this. This is a shielded wire that went down to a transmission temperature sensor we no longer have. It was just falling down on the main battery connection there at the starter.
Did you know it smells in here?
Probably like burnt wires.
Yeah. Ready?
Go!
Set the idle.
Oh.
It's all the way close.
I set the power probe down right here, and it goes, "Hurrah!"
Hey, it sounds pretty good.
It does.
Yes.
Is it missing? It's not missing?
I don't think so.
No, that was 8 happy ones.
Oh,
I
okay.
think so. Yeah.
It just sounds like really good sounding.
Oh yeah, buddy. Purple Horny's a big fat can. Almost.
Clear.
Oh, it sounds magnificent. And I could be wrong, but I think the sure grip works. All right, so
Might be over here.
yeah, it might be getting a little hot. We should probably wire those fans. That'd be a good idea. Okay, she got a little warm there. I think it needs some more coolant, and working fans would be great. The Purple Hornies make it so reasonable in volume. Where's my helmet? What? So the fun thing is the shifter
Not so much.
Well, good news, bad news. Good news, it's awesome. And thanks to Purple Hornies, it sounds amazing. The bad news, and I'm sure this will come as a shock, there's not much traction out here.
We're playing card Jenga. Then we gotta move that over there. Oh, Demon goes in there. There we go. Yeah, and then we move the two wagons that were blocking the Demon. Yeah, car Jenga.
You might be surprised to learn this, but I am excited. This is amazing. A lot has happened today, and honestly, I don't know how much made it to camera and how much didn't. I can tell you we had a few issues. For one thing, this ballast resistor is too resistory, and we don't have cranking power from the key because we don't have a factory ignition switch or a toggle or anything like that. So it wouldn't start without jumping power straight to coil positive with the power probe. Obviously, I need to address that. I did have to hurry and wire up the fans because they weren't wired at all, and I thought I wired them to the switch, but I guess I wired them straight to battery power. So as soon as you turn on the battery cutoff, they turn on. It's not ideal. The alternator doesn't charge. The battery dies immediately. This rear battery situation is just terrible. It does kind of help to explain why there used to be two back here. I think we'll be going back to that. One for cranking power and two, well, for ballast, of course. For all the misery and hacking and cutting and welding and beating that getting these headers to work took, oh, so worth it. I didn't hear any leaks. There probably are some. I don't even have flange gaskets in this thing, but it sounds incredible. And of course, it looks like this. Fantastic. Yeah, the hot exhaust next to the fuel tank. Not a permanent solution. Don't ask me to explain this, but it's somehow not puking oil everywhere. At least not yet. I definitely need to go around and retorque all the bolts. The throttle situation, 100% needs some work. Also, the scoop's just sitting there still. At a certain point, to complete a project, or at least to get it to its next step, you just have to abandon perfection and go for good enough. And that's really what we've done here today. This thing runs and drives and boils the tires off. It did not do wheelies in the street. Nowhere near enough traction. This thing could fit like a 12-inch wide slick. It's got a 9-inch wide slick that I'm pretty sure was made during the Nixon administration. So yeah, we're gonna be improving that. Also, more power. The entire electrical system is a nightmare. And I'm very much looking forward to going through all of that. Is that a tow truck? Please don't be a mail truck on a tow truck. Oh. Well, it's not a mail truck on a tow truck. What was I saying? I don't know. I could stand here and stare at this thing forever. It's amazing. But it's cold and miserable, and I'd like to be done. And I think I've earned a celebratory adult beverage. What a crazy thrash. It's been 4 days since I brought this thing home, and I didn't touch it on one of them. And now we're doing burnouts. I hope you enjoyed this.
And I hope you'll want to see this van truck thing a whole lot more because I got some plans. This is the Flying Banana. I really need to make nice with a hand lettering guy. Also a painter. So what do you think? Is it the new Bluesmobile or what? Let me know what you think of this crazy contraption in the comments. And let me know what you would do with a potentially, eventually wheelie popping van truck thing. You know, if you had one. I have to take a moment to offer a sincere thank you again to my members, especially my gold members. Without your support, I wouldn't be able to make horrible financial decisions like this. It's really appreciated. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. And remember, say why and.